33:1. Tal Caranth looked again at the timepiece on the wall. 33:1. At the end of 11 more small fractions of time, the Terrans would no longer exist. What was life? What was the purpose behind it all? In 50,000 years, the Thanarians are no nearer the answer than their ancestors had been. Why should there be life at all? Why not the suns and planets, created by chance and devoid of life? And why even the suns and planets, the millions of galaxies racing outward across the illimitable expanse of space and time? Why the universe, and why the life it contained? Why not just nothing? The Barbarians had set out to find the answer within 100 years after the building of their first interstellar ship, and Tharnar's interstellar ships had not been outside the system for 50,000 years. No Thanarian had been as far as Vendel for 15,000 years. Why had the Thanarians lost their curiosity? The curiosity and desire to learn that had created the past glory of Tharnar. He thought again of what he had discovered that night, of one of the reasons why the Terrans had named their ship the Cat. It was not because a cat was a dangerous animal, as he and the others had thought. It was because the mission of the cat would be to explore in unknown territory, because of an old Terran proverb, curiosity killed a cat. He did not yet understand the second reason behind the name, but the first reason showed that the Terrans were not without a sense of humor. How long had it been since he had heard a Thanarian laugh at himself, at his own failings, or possibility of failure? Never. Yet, wasn't that pride? What was wrong with the high-headed pride that admitted no inferiority, no failure? Wasn't 50,000 years of civilization something of which to be extremely proud? 33:5. He went to the window and pressed the button that would open it against the mechanical will of the automatic health guard equipment. It slid open, and he breathed the cool, moist air that smelled of wet earth and grass, and the odor of the lana tree flowers that were closed against the rain and would not open until the sun came out. The city was quiet in the grey of the morning. He could see one pedestrian and 3 moving vehicles in the entire visible portion of the city. The city, like the flowers of the lana trees, were not open into life until the storm was over and the sun was shining again. 33:9. The city, like the flowers of the lana trees, the beauty and perfection of them both, was the result of 50,000 years of breeding to bring about that perfection. The city, like the flowers of the lana trees. But flowers were without purpose, were only vegetation. And what was the purpose of the city? He did not know. He was the supreme executive of Tharnar, and he did not know. 33:10. He went back to his desk and switched on the 3-dimensional projection of the scene that would be taking place in the courtyard behind the prison. The man and the girl stood chained to the wall, and the robots were waiting for the third and last command from the guard leader, the blasters in their hands, as steady as though held in vices, and their metal faces impassive. He increased the magnification of the scene, drawing the images of the man and girl closer to him. There was no reading the man's face, other than the hardness and lack of fear. But on the face of the girl was a defiance that seemed to shine like a radiance about her. He was reminded of the physical similarity between the barbarian girl and his daughter. But now the similarity had faded to a shadow. There was something vital and alive about the barbarian girl. There was a beauty to her in the way she waited for death that was strange and wild by Thanarian standards. What had Thralna said the night before? Whenever I think of how they might escape and get into the city, it frightens me. It frightens me. What if it was Thralna who stood before the robots? Would she have a Thanarian pride as she looked into the black muzzle of the blaster and knew she had only a few more heartbeats of life left? Would she stand with a bold defiance of the barbarian girl, or would she drop to the ground and plead for her life? He knew the answer. But it was not Thralna's fault that she was as she was. She was only like all the others of Tharnar. 33:11. How different they were, the 2 barbarians, and the men and the women of Tharnar. Yet the difference would cease to exist within a few moments, when the man and girl were dead, when all the life and restless drive were gone from them, and they lay still on the cold, wet ground that would look the same as Thanarians. How did it feel to die in the cold dawn on an alien world, 1,000 light years from your own? But they had known such a thing might happen to them. They'd named their ship the Cat because of that. Because of that and something else. Suddenly, clearly, he understood the second reason for the name of the ship. 33:12. The guard leader dropped his arm to give the last command to the robots. Tal Karant's mind raced, and he saw two things with vivid clarity. He saw the inexorable decline of Tharnar and the city continuing down the centuries until the little spark that was left smouldered its last and was gone. And he saw the way death would obliterate the wiles and savage beauty of the barbarian girl, knew that it would go when the life went from her, to leave her with a beauty that would be colourless by contrast, that would be like the beauty of a Lana blossom or a Thanarian woman. And he thought he could see the answer to the menace that faced Tharnar and the city. "Doran!" The guard leader's first word of command came. Tal Karant's finger stabbed at one of the buttons along his desk. He shoved it down to deactivate the robot executioners, and they were frozen in immobility when the final word came. "Tenda!" He snapped the switch, which connected him with the office of Security Officer Ten Quath, and said, "Have the change taken from the Terrans, and say that they are given comfortable and unguarded quarters. Tell them that they have been pardoned by the Supreme Executive, and that they are free to leave Tharnar whenever they wish." It was mid-morning of the next day, bright and warm, with a few fleecy white clouds drifting across the blue sky. Tal Karant stood before the window again, Vortigall beside him, and watched the city come to life, slowly and leisurely, as it had come to life each mid-morning for the past 50,000 years. Vortigall looked toward the Cat, where the boarding ramps had already been withdrawn and the airlocks closed. "They're ready to go," he said. "I hope you haven't made a mistake in what you did. The other Terrans will learn of us now, and when they come—" He let the sentence trail off, unfinished. "We have a great deal to gain by the coming of the Terrans," Tal Karant said, "and little to lose." "Little to lose?" Vortigall asked. "We have Tharnar and a city to lose. We have our lives and our civilization to lose." "Yes, our civilization," Tal Karant said. "Our God that we worshipped, our civilization. Look for, listen to what I have to say. I did some thinking the night the Terrans were waiting to be executed. I'm afraid it was probably one of the few times, for thousands of years, that a Thanarian ever tried to critically examine the Tharnarian way of life. I started from the beginning, more than 50,000 years ago, when the interstellar ships of Tharnar were actually interstellar and were manned by men instead of robots. It was a good start we made in interstellar exploration, but it didn't last very long. We wanted to associate with our cultural peers, and there weren't any. We didn't attempt to make any contact with the primitive races we found. We felt that there would be no point in doing so. Tharnar possessed the highest and the only civilization in all the explored regions of the galaxy, and younger races had nothing to offer us. The time came when no more exploration ships were sent out. We retired to Tharnar and Vendal, and surrounded them with a robot-operated fleet to keep out the inferior races when they finally did learn how to build spaceships. We devoted ourselves to our social culture and became imbued with self-satisfaction, with the assurance that we of Tharnar possessed the full flowering of culture and progress. We withdrew into a shell of complacency, and each generation lived out its life with comfortable, methodical sameness, and our robot-operated fleet was on guard to prevent any other race from annoying us, from disturbing us in the wisdom and serenity of our way of life. 15,000 years ago, the last of us in Vendel returned to the more ideal world of Tharnar, and there was plenty of room for them on Tharnar by then. The population had been decreasing for thousands of years. It's decreasing right now. Women don't want to have children anymore. It's an inconvenience for them. They want comfort, the full stomach, the soft couch, the attention of their robots, and men are the same. There was no longer any incentive for living on Tharnar other than to duplicate the lives of our ancestors. There was nothing new, nothing to be done that has not already been done better. So we lapse into an existence of placid satisfaction with the status quo. We vegetate. We're like plants that have been seeded in the same field for so many centuries that the fertility of the soil is exhausted. This barren field in which we grow is our own form of culture. Do you see what the ultimate end will have to be, Vor? He had thought old Vortigall would reply for the heated defense of Tharnarian civilization, but he did not. Instead, he said, "If the present trend continues, there will come a time when there will be more robots in the guard ships than there will be Tharnarians for them to guard. But is the other better? The destruction at the hands of the barbarians." "Destruction? It's within their power to destroy us, but why should they? It will be unpleasant for many Tharnarians to contemplate, but an unbiased study of the Terrans shows that they would not want the things we have on Tharnaran and the city, that they would not consider Tharnaran and the city worth the trouble of conquest." "A conjecture," Vortigall said. "And even if you are right, and the Terrans never come to destroy us, what have we to gain by taking this risk?" "New life. We've been too long in the barren field of our own culture. We've lost our curiosity, our desire to learn, a sense of humour that would permit us to make honest self-evaluations, our pride and courage. And in losing these things, we lost our racial urge to survive. Look at the city this morning, Vor. See how slowly it moves. Listen to how still it is for a city that contains almost 1 million people. Do you know what this day is for the city? It's one more act, to be added to all the thousands of acts in the past, on the city's rehearsal for extinction. The Terrans have what we lost. They're a young race with a vitality that's like a fire, where our own is like a dying spark. That's why I let those two go, why I want the others of their kind to know of Tharnar and come here. It's not too late for us, not yet too late for contact with these Terrans, to give back to us all these things we lost." In the pause following his words, the quiet of the city was suddenly shattered by the thunder of the cat's drives. It lifted, shining and slender and graceful, and hurled itself up into the blue sky. Tower Coranth watched it until it was a bright star, far away and going out into the universe beyond, until the sounds of its drives had faded and gone. He looked away from the sky and back to the slowly moving, softly whispering city. The city that was dying and did not know it. He felt the stirring of an uneasiness within him, a strange, non-physical desire for something. It was the first time in his life that he had ever felt such a sensation. It was something so long gone from the Tharnarians that the Tharnarian word for it was obsolete and forgotten, but the Terran word for it was Wanderlust. "I almost wish I could have gone with them, Vor," he said. "They're going to try to reach the heart of the galaxy and see if they can find the answer to creation. And we on Tharnar spend our lives sipping sweet drinks as we discuss trifles and wait for the sun to shine warm enough for us to emerge from our air-conditioned houses." "If you're right in thinking that Terrans won't come to plunder Tharnar and the city," Vortigall said, "then it will be interesting to know what those two find when they reach the center of the galaxy. They don't get killed long before they reach it." "I think any hostile forms of life they encounter will find them hard to kill," Tal Coranth said. "We paid a high price for their capture, remember. There were 2 Terran proverbs behind the name of their ship. It took me quite a while to understand the second one, but when I did, I realized the true extent of Terran determination and self-confidence. Their mission was to explore across the unknown regions of space. They knew it would be dangerous, very dangerous. So they named their ship the Cat, partly because of an old Terran proverb, curiosity killed a cat. But that was only half the reason behind the name. They intended to reach the center of the galaxy, and they didn't intend to let anything stop them. So there was a second meaning behind the naming of their ship. A cat has 9 lives. End of story 6.